I'm Ken Rockwell. Here's a sleeper of a lens. The Canon RF 28 to 70mm f2.8 IS STM is a relatively inexpensive, very lightweight lens that's extremely sharp, it's extremely fast, it offers stabilization, and I prefer this lens to the clunkier and larger 24 to 70mm f2.8s from anybody else. Sony's are big and heavy, Nikon's are big and heavy, Canon's other one is big and heavy. This one offers stabilization, which some of the other brands don't, and really, I can't say enough about it. The thing is, people who don't shoot every day and spend more time reading about it than actually looking at the images these lenses can make may poo-poo this lens. I don't know. I don't read other people's reviews. I just shoot and look for myself. I'm too busy shooting all day rather than talking about it. This is a great lens. Personally, I prefer the RF 24 to 240mm lens because it covers not just the range to 70, but it also covers the range of 70 to 240 in one lens. So I don't have to swap between two lenses all the time. I much prefer that lens. But for someone who wants a really fast lens that just covers the basic range and also collapses for carrying, how cool is that? Just turn the ring. It works real well. This is a marvelous lens. Let's just take a look at some of the pictures I can make just walking around. No tripod required. The backgrounds are beautifully out of focus. And the colors are great, but lenses don't change color anymore. The color rendition of modern-day lenses ever since we got multi-coating back in the 70s have really all pretty well matched. Each brand of lenses matches the other lenses of that same brand, and color rendition is really a matter of your film or your digital settings, not the lens. Here's Tower 23 in San Diego, Pacific Beach, California, the 10th of October, 2024. This is shot on my R5 Mark II with this lens at 70mm at f2.8, handheld at a 13th at auto ISO 250. In other words, this was after sunset, so I'm catching the after sunset colors lighting up this restaurant. And f2.8 was handy, although to be honest, if you look closely at this picture, the stuff in the foreground is not in focus all the way. So a slower lens would have forced a higher ISO, but it's nice to have the speed. Something like this, just walking around at night, works fantastically well. We don't need depth of field for this shot because everything is pretty much at a far distance. This shot in Pacific Beach, California, 10th of October, 2024. This is shot at 28mm, wide open at f2.8. Handheld at a 10th of a second at auto ISO 640. Everything's ultra sharp and the stabilizers work magnificently well. Here's the Pacific Beach Pier under moonlight, Thursday the 10th of October 24. You've got the moon, you've got the last vestiges of the sunset, and you've got the humidity in the air being lit up by the lights of the city here. This is at an 1/8 of a second, handheld at f2.8. at auto ISO 5000. Now in this case, if I was lame enough to want to carry a tripod around every place I went, I could have shot it back down at ISO 100 and this would have been a much sharper picture, but personally, I don't believe in tripods. If I zoom in, you'll see the points of light remain as points. Lenses never used to do that. They used to have an aberration called coma, which would make things look like little bat-wing blobs, and you needed a spherical lens, which this lens is. Here's some lifeguard junk. Pacific Beach, 10th of October 24. This is at 33mm at f3.2, handheld for half a second at auto ISO 5000. That is really dark. The sun went down some time ago. This is lit just by some really dim lights. Half a second under moonlight, handheld. I love this lens. It's super sharp. Of course, in daylight, you can see the hairs on the raspberries on this one. This is at 60mm at f7.1 at a 400th at auto ISO 100. And again, if you want to download the original files, 45 megapixel files straight from my R5 Mark II, go to the written review. The link is in my description, and it's at kenrockwell.com, and you can have access to all the original files for your perusal, which you should do. This is a fun review here, but honestly, getting the actual files on your system to compare with whatever else you're shooting is the best way to do it. Don't worry about the low price of this lens. Don't worry about the fact that it doesn't say L on it. I have to laugh. In the old days, L sort of meant something. Really, it just meant that the lens was expensive as L, but it did mean that Canon pulled out some stops and used some special technology like a spherical lenses or weather sealing or whatnot. However, today, the L lenses for the RF cameras feel the same as this thing does. They're all plastic except for the mount and the necessary metal parts on the inside, so the lens will last a long time, but it doesn't freeze to your fingers in the sub-zero temperatures. The meaning of an L lens is a lot less today. It's really more a matter of price. I find no flaws with this lens mechanically that don't also apply to all the other stuff they sell. Again, metal mount, plastic outsides. It'll last probably as long as you want it to. It has a full set of controls. It has AF/MF switch, and when you set this to control, now what was the focus ring, this ring here, you can set it to control apertures or shutter speeds or ISOs or whatever it is you want to program on your camera, and each camera might be a little different. However, it doesn't have any click stops, so I wouldn't get too much of a kick out of using it for that. I would just leave this at auto or manual focus. But again, we all have the choice to do whatever we want. And again, there's a stabilizer control. Every lens that's stabilized or can be used with a stabilized camera should have this control right on the lens, as this lens does. It does not have a focus lock button. Too bad. If that's important, program a button on your camera to do that. The only thing bad is that this filter thread is plastic, which most lenses today have. I think that's cheaping out because I do tend to use filters, and having a plastic thread just feels crappy. On the other hand, it's an inexpensive lens, so too bad. What is it missing? It doesn't include a case or a sack. I find a sock works great, or otherwise this lens lives in my pocket. There's an optional EW73D hood. That's not included. On the other hand, I never use hoods anyway. The mounting index dot isn't raised. That's a flaw with all these Canons, so you can't feel that in the dark. There's no aperture ring, but the Canon lenses that have that don't do much either. Autofocus is fast and silent. It's not instantaneous, but it does zip from one end of the range to the other in just a moment of silence, so it's as good as it gets. Focus breathing, the image from this lens shrinks a little bit as focused more closely at every focal length, and that's only important to people trying to do cinematography with this lens. The focus distance is recorded in the EXIF data, which I read in Photoshop's lens correction filter. The bokeh, which is the quality of out-of-focus areas rather than how far out of focus they are, is excellent. These are photos taken from about headshot distance, wide open. Here at 28 millimeters at f2.8, you'll see things are not that distracting. They're not that far out of focus either because it's a wide lens and it's not that fast in the overall scheme of things. Zoomed into 70 millimeters, of course, the backgrounds become more out of focus. You can download the original sample files at kenrockwell.com. Distortion correction is usually forced on in all the cameras on which I've tried this. And there's no visible distortion with the correction on in my R5 Mark II. Although what's odd is it does tend to have, and the exact numbers are in my written review, it does tend to have a little bit of distortion, which you could take out in Photoshop, requiring a value of anywhere between plus 0.7 to plus 1.5, which is easily correctable barrel distortion. I don't think you're going to see that, but what's strange is that even with the correction, it still has a little bit. Ergonomics are good. It zooms with one strong finger, and that's about all there is to do. To collapse it, go like this. Fall off is not a problem with the automatic fall off correction. There's no need for thin filters. I can stack two standard 67 millimeter filters with no vignetting, but I will start to get vignetting at 28 millimeters on full frame with 3 stacked filters. But it's not a problem because if you need to stack 3 filters, and I haven't needed to do that since the days of film when we did our white balance correction with colored filters, just zoom in a little bit and the vignetting goes away. Flare and ghosts are very well controlled. Macro gets reasonably close and it's sharp. This is as close as it gets at 70 millimeters, wide open at f2.8. And as I zoom in, you see it is ultra sharp, even at f2.8, which you would never really use at this close of a distance. I shot at 2.8 to just show you how bad the lens could look at worst case, which is still pretty good. Normally at macro distance, you want to stop down. For instance, this is at f8, just so you can get more in focus, because at micro distances with any lens, there's very little in focus. Mechanically, it's all plastic except for the mount. I don't think that there's that much, if anything, metal on the inside. But the mount is certainly metal, so that's not going to break off. It is quality made domestically in Japan. It's odd that Canon hides that here on the light shield. That sort of suggests to me that they're going to change this and maybe move it offshore in the future. But for now, it's still domestically made in Japan. Canon's the only maker today that still makes most everything in Japan. The other guys, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, just dump things to second and third world countries. And honestly, I don't feel good spending my hard-earned American dollars having manufacturing made in countries that are not allies of the United States. But that's just me. Vote with your dollars. I sure do. It has a little bit of spherochromatism, which are reddish or bluish color fringes on things that are out of focus at f2.8. Image stabilization is excellent. I get a 4 or 4.5 stop improvement depending on focal length. And of course, all situations are different. But on my stabilized R5 Mark II, almost all of my shots at a quarter of a second at any focal length are in perfect tripod equivalent sharpness, even down in 1/4 of a second. And at 1/8 of a second, pretty much all of them are in perfect focus. That is really good. With Sunstars, it's typical. I only get Sunstars at the very smallest apertures, but they are pretty good. And so that's it. As I said 10 minutes ago, this is a great lens. It's ultra sharp. The optics are absolutely superb. It's not the olden days anymore. Today, the optics are excellent. And anybody who can't get an ultra sharp image with this at f2.8 is doing something wrong. It's not the fault of the lens. The price is right. So if you want a basic 28 to 70 f2.8, I don't see any point anymore of getting the 24 to 70 L lenses, just because I don't know why you'd want those lenses. They're bigger and they're heavier. Admittedly, if I abused my gear, I'm pretty good. I own gear for years and it still looks brand new. If I was the sort of guy who was beating my camera gear around on rocks while I was out hiking, which I don't, I usually hold my cameras close, but maybe the L lenses off a little bit, but honestly, they're still all plastic on the outside as well. So I think this obsoletes the L lenses, but that's just me. I shoot every day and I work on what I see in my images, not what I read online. So I hope that helps. The full review with even more details and all the original sample images are up at kenrockwell.com. Link is in the description, or just go to kenrockwell.com. Thanks again for watching kenrockwell.tv here on kenrockwell.com.